or they get through situations which others wouldn't do, because they literally will do anything at that moment, and it's driven by this ferocious rage. But where does that go? You know, where do you put that? They step away and sit on the sofa. Where do they put that rage? Where does that thing go that they need to just kind of fight against something and achieve something and prove something? It needs to go somewhere, and often when it can't, that's where the detrimental parts come in.
Hi guys, welcome to this week's podcast, and on today's episode we have Luke Sutton. Luke is a former cricketer who now runs his own talent management company where he looks after current athletes as well as people in the entertainment industry. We got into Luke's new book, which is all about athlete transition and the difficulties of finishing a sporting career. We also talk about why he decided to start his own podcast. As well as that, we discuss addictions in sport, what are the areas that he thinks are problematic for athletes nowadays. It was a really good conversation, and I hope you enjoy it. Here we go.
First of all, thanks for your time. The reason why I contacted you was because I saw the book that you've written that's very relevant to this podcast, which is all about athlete transition. Why now? Why did you decide to write this book, The Death of You?
I mean, it's a great question. It's a subject that I think I've wanted to talk about when I say talk about, I have been talking about it, but I think I wanted to put something fairly significant down on paper about that transition for elite athletes into retirement for a long time, because, obviously it's part of my own journey, but I think partly from frustration at kind of reading about it in the media and the sort of lack of understanding around it, and also knowing, I think, how isolated athletes get with it, really, and wanting to be able to give them a voice as much as anything. And I think on top of all of that, I just was really, really interested to explore the subject even more with people with different experiences to mine. And so the book is called The Death of You, which is a reflection of where the book goes, I think, in many ways. But it was just an absolute pleasure to write it, and I've had some lovely feedback from people who've read it, and that's good enough for me. I think it's a really interesting. Thank you. Yeah, a really interesting topic to dive into.
Yeah, and I think that was interesting was there's not many books like this one in the first place, but also not written by an former athlete. So you were able to talk to different athletes from different sports, and also kind of put your twist on it or your interpretation on it. Also, as a former cricketer who, had different issues with retirement, or as well as mental health and the kind of the process of transitioning, were there aspects of kind of the book that you took away from that you weren't expecting, that you didn't notice yourself as a cricketer, that maybe you got from Tom May or Gail Ems coming from a different sport?
Do you know, yes, I did. And I think the most overriding thing for me is my question going into the book was, why am I so happy to be in retirement and other athletes are not? Why do I not miss playing elite cricket? I don't at all, hand on heart, not at all. But why do others long to be back in that arena so much? And I think I got that question got answered for me, because I learned so much more than I knew about the conditioning that goes on for elite athletes in different arenas, and how the conditioning over time, and it's different for different people. And you'll have read, someone like Johnny Nelson, the conditioning was very much just about him as a person, of survival in the world.
Okay.
The conditioning for Gail Ems as an Olympian was really different. And what I realized is that conditioning and where you reach in that point, if it's all you ever want in life, then retirement is going to be incredibly hard, because it's the death of you. That person that got conditioned and got to that place is going to have to come to an end. For me, it wasn't that.
For yourself, your kind of transition out of sport was obviously different, because you decided to stop playing based on kind of the issues you were having with mental health. that's very different than other athletes who kind of may finish because they aren't perceived to be performing well enough. So when you finished playing, how did you deal with actually that retirement aspect, or were you just ready? Was it just the right time for you?
I'm going to make it sound more simple than it was. It was the right time for me, and on a personal level and on a career level, I wasn't getting any better, and I could offer something to the first class game, but I wasn't, I wasn't improving. But on a personal level, I just obviously it came to a halt because I went into rehab at the end of 2011 season. And I needed to make some drastic changes to my life, and stepping away from cricket was going to allow me to do that. Whether I could have done it within cricket, I don't know. And so it was really the right time for me to step away, because personally, I didn't want to be that person anymore. I wanted to, the death of you. I was very happy to let go of that person and try and become a better version of myself. And to step out of cricket was definitely the right time for me.
And I remember, you've used the word rage quite a few times. This rage it wasn't really determination to succeed as a cricketer. There was this rage, and this was something you talked with Paul Walsh about in the book, because he had a different kind of rage based on his, he was a smaller player, so he had to have this rage within him to succeed. This is almost, do you think this is a necessary evil for athletes to succeed? They need this kind of, this element that's also going to be, it could be kind of detrimental to them for their personality as well.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's got to be that rage, and it comes from different people. And rage, it can, when someone hears the word rage, they think of someone being angry, and it is anger, but it's more intensity. That's what I'd call it, deep burning, the strongest intensity you can possibly imagine. And that intensity is going to push someone to do things that maybe their talent doesn't, get. They go beyond their talent, or they get through situations which others wouldn't do, because they literally will do anything at that moment, and it's driven by this ferocious rage. So I think that elite sports people do need to have that, but where does that go? Where do you put that? And if you're someone's that, footballers struggle the most, partly because of the kind of the freedom that the money allows them. They step away and sit on the sofa. Where do they put that rage? Where does that thing go that they need to just kind of fight against something and achieve something and improve something? It needs to go somewhere, and often when it can't, that's where the detrimental parts come in.
Is there do you feel, do you have more of a kind of a purpose now in life after sport, or do you think you found that, or is it still just an ongoing journey? I mean, that's quite a deep question, this purpose in life. It's quite abstract, but
yeah, I do feel like I have, but that's not to say it's always perfect, and I definitely need to look after myself and keep an eye on, but that purpose for me is, because I have a huge work ethic. I love working, and I work obviously with businesses that I own now, and I put that ferocity and that intensity into those. I think the big difference for me in retirement is that I don't judge myself by the outcomes of those things. I love the competition and the battle and the challenge of information and difficult situations. But I don't judge myself on what happens at the end of it. I don't. That's very different to what I was doing when I was a cricketer. I judge myself on how I played, did the team win?
Like you would have in sport.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly right. Whereas now my purpose is to just live the best life I can be. I know it sounds a bit coy, but I genuinely mean it. Be the best person I can be, the best father I can be, the best partner, the best ex-husband I can be, best son. I really, that's what I judge myself on, and the rest of it is the competition, is the fun, is the where I place it. And I think it's just that difference of not hooking on to outcome as much as I used to.
Do you think if you had this kind of you had this kind of happiness or your contentment that you have now, would you have made it as an athlete in the first place?
Yeah, I do, because that intensity would have still been there. I think I would have just been. I probably would have been able to be a little bit more healthy, and it had been a bit more sustainable. But you know what? It's a great question. I don't know the exact answer. I think so, but there was times in my career where I played through injuries, which I should, in reality, I should never have done. But I came back. I had a broken thumb and I had to have a knee operation. And the day before me coming back, and I wasn't that fit with my thumb, I injured my knee again. And I didn't tell anyone because I wanted to play, because I felt I'm so under pressure to play in the team. And in that game, I broke a batting record for Lancashire, and I had an unbelievable game. And so I look back on that and I'm like, well, I probably caused my knee more long-term damage, but what was driving me, should I have done it? What was driving me was it was that rage, it was that intensity where there wasn't perspective. It was like, I have to do this. And do I regret it? No, because I still hold that batting record, and it was a great moment for me. And it's a really difficult one, isn't it? So where do you put the line? Where do you, I saw when Conor McGregor broke his leg in one of his last fights, he talked about the fact that, he had that injury going into the fight. And I could, he's a polarizing character, but people were saying, well, it's stupid to do that. He's putting himself at risk. And I was thinking, if you don't understand what's going on in his head, that perspective and balance doesn't exist. And that's why he does what he does. He probably fought in other fights where he was at risk and came through fine, and we didn't know about it. So it's a tough one.
You have your businesses, so the kind of the management company of athletes. Are you noticing? Do you feel you're able to kind of guide them a little bit based on what you've gone through as a former athlete, and kind of advise them on, if some of your clients might be coming towards the end of their career, are you able to spot something if you think they're going through certain difficulties, or do you try not to kind of get too involved in that side?
No, I do get involved in that side, but I think the tricky bit is that, and I can certainly spot it in clients, and certainly, red flags will be coming up for me of going, I really need to keep a close eye on them at the moment. But I also have to recognize that it's their journey, and that sometimes I can't essentially, I learned from my experience because I went through my experience. So I can, with clients who go through similar problems, I can talk to them and share with them my experience and what happened and how I would advise they did things. But I also personally have to let go of trying to control them, because it's their life, it's their, I need to be a good influence on them, but they need to experience what they can. And I think there have been clients existing and past who've not fallen off the cliff as much because we've been able to share together where we've been and what we're feeling. But at the same time, I think they still had a fall, and it's just not been as bad. And I think, it's just a really interesting balance of not trying to control people and allow them to experience what they need to.
They just kind of know that there's support there if they need it, and that you are there, and that you're around the corner if you want to contact them, really.
Yeah, exactly. And I think if you're open about, I'm really open about my previous struggles and my ongoing, the way I want to live my life, and so they know it. So it's almost like there's someone staring at them who's saying, listen, if you need some help, then just tell me, and we can talk about it. So I definitely don't try and hide anything from my clients or people I work with. Everybody knows, that what I've been, what's happened in my life, and that's a good thing, I think.
Well, do they get a discount on the books?
That's a great question. They get some free books, that's for sure. Yeah.
Just talking about the, with the mental health side in sport at the moment, are you seeing different kind of issues that are troubling athletes in this kind of modern social media world that we live in, or is it quite similar to when you were playing, cricket in the, I suppose, late 90s and 2000s?
It's definitely amplified from my time, and my time was amplified from the 10 years prior to that, or 20 years prior to that. There's no question that the challenges, mental health challenges are, I've said for a long time, I think professional sport is going to be spitting out people with mental health and addiction issues for a very long time, a very long time, because we have to understand the person that we're putting in that environment, then the environment, and then what we expect from them afterwards. It's very, very much about what the book's about. And I think that is really heightened I don't even know what the right adjective is, enormously now. People will be, there'd be, in previous times, people would have made a comment on social media to their friends when they're really young and naive and silly and not really thought about it, or they might have said something and they might have got away with it. That doesn't happen now.
Get picked up.
Yeah, that doesn't happen now. They could get picked up, and they don't even remember writing it or saying it or doing it, and they didn't mean it. They would, they were just young and naive, and doesn't mean it's acceptable, but they get caught on it and then get really bruised by it. Likewise, they get, that social media is that thing that they kind of have to embrace, want to embrace because it's their world they've grown up in. But at the same time, they have millions of people judging them on a mistake or a bit of success, which creates all sorts of outside affirmation, validation issues, handling that criticism. Really, really difficult. And it's never been stronger, really. And you see it all the time. Owen Farrell's taking a break from the international game to look after him and his family's mental health after some of the difficulties he took in the Rugby World Cup. And crikey, for someone as strong as Owen Farrell to be there and to open up like that, then this is where things are at.
I mean, he's considered to be such a leader when he's played at Saracens and England, and the fact that he's decided to step back, and the Six Nations is a kind of, it's the biggest tournament in the UK every year. It must be. Maybe it's just a kind of, I'm sure he needs that break as well mentally, but maybe it's also just two fingers up to the press and the media and the supposed fans, of rugby, kind of saying, well, I'm going to step back here and just not put up with your kind of crap for 6 months,
I don't know. He's always struck me as the kind of guy. He's deeply proud to play for England. He's one of the greatest rugby players that we've ever produced. I just think it says a lot that he feels that he's in that space, that he needs to make the decision he does, and nothing. I'd love to say that. Okay, everybody will go, oh, that wasn't so good. Maybe we should rethink how we deal with an Owen Farrell at times. I don't think it will happen.
Yeah.
I honestly, hand on heart, I don't think the media will change what they do. I don't think people on social media will change what they do with regards to that. I think people see them as fair game, and that's the world they're in. And
they find someone else.
Yeah, they'll find, exactly right. They'll find somebody else, but that's the nature of professional sport right now.
I get into your podcast, which I really enjoy. I'm not just blowing smoke. I really enjoy that podcast with Fraser Franks, who twice he's been mentioned now on this podcast, which means I have to get in touch with him. And also you talked with Stephen Reid on the most recent episode. Fraser said 25 years ago this wouldn't have been discussed. A coach, Stephen Reid, a very good coach at Forest, former player playing at a high level, has the confidence to come out and say, I'm struggling here. How was that talking with Stephen Reid about these different subjects of kind of anxiety and imposter syndrome?
I loved it. I loved speaking to Stephen, and I think I said on the podcast, he was really letting himself be vulnerable and talking about subjects which you don't hear someone in professional sports speaking that openly about things like that. But yet you could see the power it gave him. He's so strong and such a strong individual.
Yeah.
And I think that really came through. I think I remember in my time Marcus Trescothick was one of the first cricketers who came out and talked about challenges with mental health. But do you know what? I remember that time, and cricket didn't really know what to do. We didn't really, people didn't know, what was all about, what was going on, how to handle it. And so we have moved a long way, no question of it. But if you think about some of the things that Stephen Reed was talking about, he was talking about having panic attacks in the middle of a Premier League match. Imagine now if a Premier League footballer came out now and admitted that. I don't think they could. I don't think it would be possible. I don't know. Maybe, I'm very happy to be proven wrong, but I can't see how they'd go to their manager and say, oh, I actually had a panic attack today. The manager, I don't think they can. And I'm not necessarily blaming anyone, but it did make me, when I was hearing Stephen talk like that, which is amazing, I was just thinking, how many other players are there like that at the moment in Premier League football, going through those issues that you just don't know about?
Yeah. I mean, you actually talked yourself about, you told Fraser that you had an anxiety attack. Was it a few weeks before or 6 weeks before that? So I'm guessing it's also just a kind of continuous process for yourself as well. It's just a continuous journey of looking after yourself.
Yes, definitely. And I had a panic attack a few weeks ago, and it's the first time I've had one for a really, really, really long time, like years and years. And I thought it was past, and it was just had been a build up of pressure and pressure and pressure. And I think it was not a nice experience at all, and it scared me, but it probably scared me in a good way. To go, I'd got slipped back into a habit of thinking I could take more on and more on and more on, and I didn't need to worry didn't need to manage that. And suddenly it was too much, and it's like that one extra drop in the bath, and suddenly it's overflowing. And I think it's, if you've got that within you, that can be an issue for you. You need constant kind of looking after yourself.
So the podcast itself, why did you decide to do this podcast, Understanding Men? And this is a podcast you do with Fraser Franks. Fraser's a former footballer who had to retire on health grounds, and anyone listening should absolutely listen to it, especially men. But I think it's a really interesting podcast. It wasn't what I was expecting, coming from two former footballers, but there's definitely things that I can relate to, especially the podcast I listened to yesterday on imposter syndrome, because I have that 5 minutes before I start a recording for this podcast. So what was it that made you want to start this podcast with Fraser?
By the way, I have that feeling before we record every podcast as well for us, so don't worry. What drove the podcast? I think I've had a great relationship with Fraser over the last few years. We talk really openly about things that we know that men don't often talk about. We're really open with each other. We're very, very similar in lots of ways. And that's the big driver for me, is that I have a 14-year-old son who's amazing. And, I couldn't wish for a better son. And I have two stepsons who are amazing also. And I can see the influences that are out there on social media at the moment for young men. And I kind of have seen a few young men within my kind of family sphere who really have become very disillusioned and even a little bit angry with the world. And when I hear them talk, it's stuff that is quite toxic, and it's stuff that they've picked up on YouTube and TikTok and, social media, with regards to how men are treated within the world at the moment.
It's just the kind of world of the Andrew Tate and these kind of people.
Totally, yeah. And I hate to talk about Andrew Tate way too much, but he's a good example. Those influences of sort of saying, we need to be these alpha men who show no weakness and get on with it, and you should be doing this, you should be doing that, women should be treated in this way, you should only marry virgins. for young men, it suddenly dawned on me that actually in an age of female empowerment, and I have a daughter as well, and I love the age of female empowerment and what it's done for her and the world that she moves into. I just had this moment where I was like, have we just left young men alone a little bit? And then these influences come in and suddenly they get quite a distorted view of the world. And, and that's when I said to Fraser, why don't we do a podcast and just start talking about the stuff that we talk about and talk about some of the subjects that are out there that I think men want to talk about, but probably don't talk about. And I just love the podcast. Anyone who's listening to this, please check it out. We're really proud of it. It's called Understanding Men because all the connotations with that. Maybe we're trying to understand men. You're trying to understand men. We are understanding men. I don't know, but we're just really proud of it. And I've had loads of people contact me who've had taken a lot from it, and I think that's it for us. That's perfect. That's exactly why we want to do it.
Genuinely, I really enjoy it. I've subscribed. I obviously been reading your book the last week, and then I saw only yesterday that you had the one with Stephen Reed. And I remember when Stephen Reed came kind of public in 2022, I think it was, when he stepped back from coaching Forest just after they get promoted. I remember that coming out, and he's always been, it's such an interesting story that you had. He's such a kind of quiet guy and quite focused. You see him walking on the pitch a lot after a game as a coach, and you think he's just got it sorted. He's just strong, but then you have no idea what is going on. Obviously, he talks about his anxiety that he's had as a coach, and there must be so many other people going through that anxiety as well. So yeah, it's a really interesting episode.
Yeah, so I was just going to say I think what I found really interesting with the Stephen Reed one is that he's a really in-demand coach. He's a really in-demand first-team coach, and obviously it's in the Premier League at the moment and has been, tapped up by different clubs at different times. And I find that interesting because it's like, what is it about him that these big managers like? And you go, well, is it a tactical thing? Maybe, but maybe it's just that he's got a real human element to his coaching, and it's from his experience. So he has that kind of really confident exterior, but also when he's coaching players, he's able to connect with them because of his experiences in a way that makes something really powerful within their unit. And I wonder if that's very much come from his own personal struggles. We've got a really powerful episode coming out on Monday around marriage separation, which Fraser's talked recently that in recent months him and his wife are separated, and I think that's a really powerful one for people as well. I looked sometimes down on the episode list, and I just feel we're going to continue every Monday. We'll be releasing ones, for as long as we possibly can. So we're going to cover a lot. But I feel so proud of some of the things that we went to, and things about body image and sex and pornography. It's just there's things that men don't talk really about, and I think it really needed to be talked about. Money and status and all those sorts of things. And yeah, I'm really proud of it.
Do you see the podcast as a kind of a form of I know therapy? Is it a form of therapy for you? That kind of connection with Fraser, that just kind of connecting with him?
100%. Yeah, most definitely. It's just it also, I've really in my life now, I think it's really important, and I actively look to do it, like with the podcast and the book, to do things that are not about making money or some sort of business thing. It's just the podcast is just me and Fraser talking. That's it, and it's so good for both of us, and we're talking about subjects that we need to talk about as well. And I love that. And I think everybody might, for me, what works is having time in a day or a week where you step out of that kind of helter-skelter of life and you just do something just for the pureness of it. And the podcast is definitely that.
I mean, I think when I listen to it, I definitely feel that there's a genuine a genuine friendship there and connection there with Fraser. And I think that's quite important for especially men. There's a lot of studies about how men have become they've lost the connection with meeting up with older friends, from the past. I've definitely had that living in Germany. I mean, I don't see any of my friends anymore, and it's just the odd WhatsApp message, but it's not the same. I think it sounds like connecting with Fraser is definitely, and it's something that could be promoted for other people, is to kind of check in with other people for more than just a WhatsApp or something. It's actually actively getting out there and kind of reconnecting with friends. It's really important.
And I think it's the good and the bad bit of social media. Social media has connected us so wonderfully, but also disconnected us so wonderfully, because it's kind of like, well, do we slip into a place where we're getting enough of what's going on in our friend's life that we don't need to go and meet up with them? And but we need, humans love humans. If anyone ever needs any proof of that, look what happened to us during lockdown. We hated it, we just didn't like not being able to have that kind of human interaction. I think it's so important.
Yeah, the podcast, I would highly recommend it to anyone. It's I'm really enjoying it, and I enjoyed the one with the gymnast, Niall Wilson.
Yeah, Niall Wilson.
Yeah, he discussed his kind of identity of leaving the sport. He had this identity as being an Olympian. What did you learn from that conversation with Niall? How did it relate to you finishing your career as a cricketer?
For Niall, it was his story is really powerful in that he's had to retire at a very young age, 24, 25, and is very successful away from his sport and financially is able to, is in a really good position. So it's essentially, to the average observer, it's like, well, look, okay, yeah, you retired early, but look, you won an Olympic medal, look at you, you've got loads of money, you're happy, all's good. And yet when he talks, you can still hear that kind of massive void in his life where all of that kind of doesn't really get anywhere close to allowing him to compete in elite sport. And it really makes me think about the fact that, I don't have that. So for me, it's because he just loved performing and being an Olympian, being a gymnast. That's what he wants, For me, I was a professional cricketer. I'm happy not to be a professional cricketer anymore because I kind of got myself into a real pickle as a person.
Not your identity now.
No, absolutely not. And the death of you, with my book it's the death of that person. That's what happens, and how you deal with it and how you're able to kind of put that into perspective is very much the key.
What do you think could be done more in... I know in rugby and cricket and football, they're trying to put frameworks in place for athletes to have this kind of easier transition. What do you think could be done more to kind of? It's a difficult question, but to kind of help these athletes to transition and find this new purpose, or is that an impossible question to answer? Everyone's different.
No, it's not impossible. It's a very difficult. It's a complex answer, and you're right. Everybody is different. I think the broadest answer I'd give to it is that I think in my time, for good, well-meaning reasons, it was very much about, okay, go and get a qualification, and then that's going to help you in retirement. Go and do a course, and you'll be good. And that still does exist. Now, I'm not saying that that's not going to be helpful, but the struggle is something much more profound and deeper than just having an accountancy course or a workman's course or qualification. The crux of it comes down to what you and how you have been conditioned and nurtured are going to find the outside world, because it isn't the same as professional sport. It isn't. The rules are different. The way you're going to interact is different. So
coming out of a bubble,
coming out of a very conditioned kind of environment into something that's going to be very alien to you. So someone can have a qualification, but if they're not ready for that, that's going to hit them like a train. So for me, it's very much get more ex-athletes talking to athletes about what's to come, because it's going to be difficult. That's it. It's not going to be an easy transition, but get them to explain to them in their language why it's going to be difficult. And okay, yes, get qualifications, absolutely. But that bit of telling them what it's going to be like is going to be from people that they trust and know, not just someone kind of giving them a lecture. Then that's really going to help.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot more former athletes kind of seems like they'd be going into, I mean, that would be a great idea for former athletes to go into a new career of how to help former athletes, finding that new, I mean, is anything really going to replicate the buzz of playing professional sport? Unlikely, is it? It's necessary to find something else you love.
Yes, or finding, what you're talking about, purpose and meaning and direction. I think those, they're all interwoven and they're all really important. But it's kind of like, what am I doing? What am I meant to be doing? You could have millions and millions in the bank, but if you wake up and you don't really know what you want to do, it's a very long day. And I think it is helping people like that. But the truth is that people need to go out there from professional sport and experience the outside world, work out what they like and what they don't like. It's a bit like when someone leaves university, there might be that their first job is a great lesson for them because they think, I'd never want to do that job again. And, it's the same for professional athletes. They need to get out there and experience it. But they, in my book, I write about, Gail Ems talks about it really well, that professional athletes are very used to feedback. Very used to feedback. Okay, we didn't play well. Why? What did I do wrong? Okay, how do I fix that? Great. Right, we're going to go to the training ground. We're going to go fix that thing. They're very used to confrontation and very used to feedback, and they're craving it. They're really craving it to go, okay, because ultimately they want to solve the problem.
To improve.
Yeah, they want to improve. So I missed a penalty. Okay, tell me, why did I miss my penalty? Well, your weight was in the wrong position. Okay, right, let's go and practice that now 3,000 times so don't do it again. That's what they want to do. When they walk out into the normal world and they go to a big corporate environment where people are trying to climb the corporate ladder at different times and opportunities can be quite political and quite difficult, they don't get that feedback. They don't get a clear pathway as to go, okay, I didn't get it. What do I need to do? And so they're battling. Yeah, with others. Yeah, exactly. And they don't understand the rules. If it's like, okay, they're in a team, and if you're in a team, we're there to win this game of football, rugby, cricket, netball, whatever it is. In a corporate environment, yes, we're trying to do well for the company, but actually we've all got our own little agendas as to where we're trying to move within the corporate ladder. They struggle with it.
To survive and climb the ladder, yeah.
And so they just need to be talked through that and have the experience of experiencing it, and then being able to come back out and speak to somebody and go, I don't really understand this. Why is this working like this? And then move forward from there.
And that's something that Tom May discussed as well in the book, how he was going into companies and kind of in a kind of maybe in an internship or just a kind of experience side, and you're a kind of a graduate level kind of knowledge going in, but you've had all this experience as an athlete. It doesn't put you where you might think you are because you haven't really experienced the business side, the corporate life yet, because you've been in this bubble of being an athlete.
Yeah. No, I think in Tom's case with professional rugby, it's, rugby players, there's, because of the physical battle and physical confrontation, there's just a set of values, and they live in a structure, professional rugby players, which is more unique, I think, than cricket or rugby or other sports, because they have to put their physical trust in each other in a really, I don't know if extreme's a bit too much, but a very powerful way. So whether they like each other or not, when it comes to showtime, they are at war and they are brothers or sisters together going, right, we're going to look after each other. So rugby players, live like that. If you interact with them, it's like, there's almost like a military feel to it. So the way that they go about them looking after their brothers, and they might not even like each other, but that doesn't matter. This is more important for them. So for them, when they go in that corporate world and they find, when they go in the corporate world and they find that someone's backstabbing them, or somebody's not trying to help them with something, they don't understand it, because like, hang on, I've lived my whole life by this set of values, and now you're telling me it doesn't make any sense now.
I just want to go back to now Wilson, and this is something that you would relate to. He talked about drinking and how he was maybe going too far with his drinking, and this is obviously something you experienced, and you went to the Priory because of these issues. Is that right? That you went to the Priory because of those issues?
Yeah.
Was it mental health grounds?
Well, it was all part of the same family, really. But drinking was a big part of it. Yeah. So my relationship with alcohol was the main driver. My mental health was shot, but in a big part because of the way I was drinking. Yeah.
I mean, this is something you discussed in the book. Sorry, I want to get the title right.
Back from the Edge.
Back from the Edge. Apologies.
No, don't need that.
Is there still a drinking culture in professional sport, or are there different addictions? You mentioned before how there'll be a lot of athletes spat out of sport who will have to live with addiction and mental health problems. What do you think is still, what are the issues at the moment of addiction in sport?
I don't think there is a drinking culture like there used to be. I think, all sports have just, the need for higher performance and means that you just couldn't do it. The physical fitnesses that they have to be, even for a sport like cricket, which isn't the same demands as a rugby, but still it doesn't exist in the same way. I think the biggest one that I worry about is gambling.
Yes. Yeah.
I think it's a silent assassin, because I think you can do it on your phone, no one can see.
Yeah.
If you're talking about young men and women who've got more than their counterparts in money, it's very tempting. It's very, it gives them that buzz, that they get the same buzz of doing something on a field. And I think it doesn't surprise me when I hear things in the press of someone's been banned because of betting offences. That's the biggest one that I worry about at the moment.
Yeah, the problem with the gambling, isn't it, is you can't notice the physical sides of gambling like you can with alcohol or drugs. It can just be this, like you say, this silent aspect. I'm talking to Patrick Foster next week, who was a former cricketer.
Oh, brilliant.
Yeah. And obviously talk to him about the gambling problem, but about his gambling history and how he's done so well to come back from a really dark place. But yeah, it sounds like the drinking culture has kind of been replaced with this kind of digital form of addiction, and especially with gambling, especially as the financial aspect, the financial side. I mean, the most of the stories we hear of gambling addiction are from footballers. Most of the stories you hear coming out are from footballers, and they seem to have potentially higher wages than others, and they feel it's just gamified to go and gamble.
Yeah, I think so, but I think it probably exists in other sports. It might just be that generally football gets much more attention because of the money and the profile that we see it more. But I think football, I'm trying to think of a couple of players who recently, I think Ivan Toney got banned, didn't he, from betting? I remember hearing him on a podcast talking about it, and he was actually betting on football, which you think of how powerful that is, that he knows he's not meant to be doing it, and yet he's still betting on his own sport. I mean, and I think that just shows how powerful an addiction can take you, that you can't see anything.
It was on his own team as well.
Yeah, I understand it wasn't games that on his own team, games that he wasn't playing in, but still on his own team. So you just think, well, how powerful must that be that he still crossed those lines to do it?
Yeah.
there you go. There's the nub of it.
Luke, thank you for your time. Where are the places that people can get hold of you and find where you are on social media or LinkedIn and podcast?
Yeah, well, thank you. It's been a pleasure being on. No, people find me on, I think I'm on all social media. Come find me on Instagram, but check out the Understanding Men podcast also on Instagram, and I think it's on TikTok. And my books are available on Amazon. But if anyone's ever, in any of the subjects I talk about, and we talk about on the podcast, I welcome all opinions. If someone really disagrees with me, that's okay. That's cool. Come and tell me. And I value everyone's opinion on it. So please find me if you want to.
And there we go. That was my conversation with Luke Sutton. Thank you to Luke for his time. I really appreciate it. I hope you enjoyed the podcast. If you did, please consider subscribing. Check out the description below, also where you can find Luke's book, as well as his podcast and the links to his social media. Okay, thanks for listening, and see you next time.